Hi everyone, Chris here. Hope you're well. So the Realme 6 or the Realme 6 Pro, which one is best and which one is best for you? If you're on a budget, you get the cheaper model maybe, the Realme 6, or is it worth paying the extra to get the Realme 6 Pro, which does have the Snapdragon 720G in it versus the Helio G90T that's in the Realme 6. There's a slight difference in the screen size, but they're both about the same kind of quality, but one has a pill notch in it. So that wider cutout doesn't look as good as just the single hole cutout that's in the 6. So in this comparison, I'm going to go in depth. We'll take a look at some benchmarks, performance, build quality, cameras, battery life, charge time. How are they? Which one is the best out of these two? That's what I'm here to answer in this detailed comparison. So there's a difference with our displays. We've got a 6.6-inch screen with Gorilla Glass 5 on the Realme 6 Pro versus the Gorilla Glass 3 on the Realme 6, which is 6.5 inches, so it's 0.1 of an inch smaller. You can see side by side, you don't really notice that difference. Now, the 6 Pro does weigh slightly more. This one's about 206 grams, so around 11 to 12 grams heavier, than the Realme 6. Now, the back materials of them, same camera layout, plastic frames on both of these, but we do have definitely plastic on the Realme 6, and you can feel it when you tap it and press it in. It just feels a little bit more spongy there. Now, the Realme 6 Pro apparently has glass on the back of it right here, but when I tap it, it almost feels like it could actually be plastic as well, but just one of those more hardened, resilient plastics that imitate glass, and that's kind of why it would fool some people, I think, just thinking it is actually glass, but I don't think it is. So down the bottom, both had 3.5mm headphone jacks, both have loudspeakers, just single loudspeakers. I'll give you a sample of both of them later on in this video, this comparison. So there's two microphone holes there, possibly two mics at the bottom on the Realme 6, and just a single one on the bottom on the Realme 6 Pro, but the top of it does have a secondary noise cancelling mic, something the Realme 6 is missing. Both of the Type-C ports do not support video out, and both support 30-watt fast charging, and they will charge from anywhere from 51 minutes through to 58, which is still very quick for a 4,300 milliamp hour battery. The SIM trays can be found on the top left, along with our volume up and down buttons made out of plastic. Now, these SIM trays take 2 nano SIMs and a micro SD card. Moving on to the panels now in a little bit more detail. So there is a difference between them, and it's very, very minor. They both have a brightness maximum of around 430 to 440 nits of brightness, which means in sunlight, as you can see now, both of them, you can make it out, but it's not going to be the easiest screen out there that you will see in direct sunlight. But it is acceptable, and you can still make out and send text messages and things like that. So that is the main thing, of course, when looking at them under direct sunlight. Here in the studio, a little bit different here. Now, both of them have a bluish tint to them out of the box when you do get them. And I wanted to point out that both also do exhibit and suffer from a little bit of pixel dimming around those cutouts. So if I bring up our settings here, just a white background, you can now see that there's a little bit around both of them. You see it around this cutout and then around the bottom of the notch here. And that may be annoyance to some people, but you only do actually see this when you have normally a solid bright color. You will notice that. So both of them have dark mode, eye care mode, but what is missing on the Realme 6 is this option right here. So we have a screen color mode. Now you don't get this with the MediaTek powered device. Now I prefer the gentle setting, so out of the box it actually comes with Vivid, but I'm going to keep it on Vivid to keep both of these displays basically looking the same here. Now they do of course have full screen gestures, which I'm running here at the moment, and you've got an override for the refresh rate. Both of them I have set to 90 Hertz, so you can set them if you want to save on batteries. You'll see later on in this particular comparison that 60 Hertz will save you a lot of battery life compared to 90, which burns through that battery very quick. Now this is very interesting. I wanted to point out that the lower spec device here, because my Realme 6 has 4GB of RAM and 64GB of storage versus the Realme 6 Pro, which has 128GB of storage and 8GB of RAM. So double the RAM, but watch this. Did you see? Okay, performance, let's do that again. Is much smoother. The scrolling, I have noticed, look at the scrolling here. Now I'm not making this up. The scrolling to me is smoother on the cheaper device with the Helio G90T. And of course, it only has half the RAM. So why is this happening with the animations? It's probably ROM optimization, but to me, The Realme 6 Pro is definitely slower, and I've noticed too that when this one hits about 15% of battery, it becomes quite choppy, the UI, definitely not running at 90 frames per second. And the Helio-powered one, the Realme 6, just seems to be a lot smoother here. Hopefully you can see this coming through. It just seems to be a little more juddery there. So let's have a look now at some benchmarks. Now, I won't do a speed test, but we will open this app at the same time. And you see that it came up first on the Realme 6 and not the Pro. That's just my gallery with all the photos in there. So let's jump into some albums here because there are details I want to point out. Now, big difference here in terms of battery life. So first up, this is the Realme 6 Pro with almost 9 hours with this display calibrated at 200 nits of brightness, 90 hertz PC mark test. Great result. This is actually very good for 90 hertz, okay? Look at that abysmal result, really bad, on the Realme 6 that only got, well, it got under 6 hours here, so that is not good to see. So if you want the best battery life straight away, you go for, I would say, for the Realme 6 Pro, but, you know, that lag that's coming in the UI, which I am seeing, which is not the best. Now, both of them do have Widevine Level 1 certs, you don't need to worry about that. I mean, even right now, looking at the animations, right here with the gallery, it seems slower on the Realme 6 Pro. Both have Camera 2 API support, which is great. Now, GPS, there is a difference here. So we have a 1 meter accuracy on the Helio-powered device, the Realme 6, versus the 3 standard. So Qualcomm devices don't seem to have accuracy better than 3. I don't know why, but MediaTek does here. But look at the average signal strength down the bottom here. Slightly better on the Redmi 6 Pro right there. And wireless. The wireless is marginally better on the Realme 6 Pro as well. I found that when you have low signal strength, just 2 bars, it will get better average speeds, and that's what we want with low signal strength. So let's go over now to internal storage. This one, okay, the interesting results here. You can see that it is faster. The internal storage on the Realme 6, the slower, cheaper device, actually turns out to have the faster storage. Okay, so that's going to vary from NAND chips that they use for our UFS 2.1 storage. Now, here's a benchmark that you can trust, I think. This is Geekbench 5, so MediaTek doesn't cheat on this one, or shouldn't, but they could. And you can see that that is faster on the Qualcomm Snapdragon 720. And here's Antutu, very close scores here. I didn't expect it to be this close, so it's a good result we're getting with 8 gigabytes of RAM on the Realme 6 Pro. Very similar. And can you trust MediaTek here? They've been proven that they basically cheat when it comes to benchmarks. They detect it and boost all those cores up and clock them a much higher than normal to try and get these really good benchmark results. Difference in bloatware as well. I don't know why, but probably because I've got slightly different regions here. So I've got the European version of the Realme 6 with NFC, and this model I think is an Asian or Hong Kong release, which has Google Play, but it doesn't have NFC, and it also comes with a lot of bloatware because we've just got Opera and a few other apps, maybe 3 bloatware apps on the Realme 6 European version versus a lot of junk and bloatware that is on the Realme 6 Pro. And both of them are on the latest firmwares. So what other differences do we have? I've noticed that the haptic feedback motor on the 6 Pro is a little bit better than the Realme 6. I'm not too sure why this is. I had assumed that they would have had the same exact motor in them, but there is a difference to me. The vibration just comes through a little bit better on the Realme 6 Pro. Onto our audio quality now. So there is the best voice call quality on the Realme 6 Pro because it has the top active noise cancellation mic, which the Realme 6 is lacking. 3.5mm headphone quality. There is a slight difference between them, and this is going to be down to personal preference. It's subjective, but I believe that the Realme 6 Pro sounds slightly better to my ears. In terms of loudspeakers, I'll give you a sample now, but they both sound to my ears exactly the same. They are using, I believe, the same exact speaker. What about face unlocking and the fingerprint readers? Exactly the same. Very fast the face unlocking. Now the fingerprint reader on both of them, always on capacitive. Touch it, it unlocks that quick. I'll do it now to the Realme 6. So just touch it, unlocks, and it seems to work for me 9 out of 10 times. So I've been gaming on both of these phones now for half an hour just to gauge the temperatures and how fluid they are. But both of them have a bit of lag. This is Shadowgun Legends, by the way, in the high setting, 60 frames per second, no 90 frames per second support with these. And I've noticed that they both are very fluid. This game is playable, but you do see frame dips between both of them, depending on what you're doing. It normally just happens at the start of the level when something explodes, there is a pause, but it's noticeably worse on the MediaTek-powered Realme 6. It also gets hotter, so let's take a look at our temperatures here. This is using Antutu's temperature probe there, so almost 64 degrees on the Realme 6 versus a much cooler 52 degrees only on the Realme 6 Pro. So if you plan to game for hours on end, I would definitely go for the Realme 6 Pro, because not only is it slightly smoother at gaming, it also runs a lot cooler and is a lot easier on your battery as well. You get more runtime. Now, both of these cameras, the main sensor is a 64 megapixel Samsung GW1. They both have 8 megapixel ultra wides. The difference we get is with our 2x optical 12 megapixel camera on the Realme 6 Pro. The Realme 6 Pro also has, as well as the 16 megapixel front facing camera, alongside it is an 8 megapixel ultra wide that the Realme 6 lacks. Onto our cameras now. So there's a couple of things I wanted to point out before I show you those comparisons side by side in video. Is this right here. In the video mode, we have the ultra steady for the front facing camera, and with the rear camera as well on the Realme 6 Pro. This is something that is not on the Realme 6. So the ultra steady max mode is there as well, which uses the ultra wide camera, which gives us more stabilization, and it gets a better field of view and crops more because of it using the ultra wide. And if I do go into the photo modes here, that is pretty much the exact same options for both of them. 64 megapixel mode is there. But when I swap over to the front facing cameras, you will see now that we have this right here. So we can shoot ultra wide. Now, when you take a photo with ultra wide and you want it portrait, it will just use the main camera. So here are front-facing cameras. There is a big difference here in quality, the Realme 6 against the Realme 6 Pro. You can see that the Realme 6 is doing a bit better maybe with the exposure here, but look how all the footage shakes around everywhere. That's because it doesn't have any electronic image stabilization with the front-facing camera. And that means that, of course, on the Realme 6 Pro, we have this crop that comes in quite a bit closer. Now, it does have the ultra-wide camera. So this is 1080p video first that I wanted to show you. Now there's a big difference here again in terms of stability, that the Realme 6 is lacking any form of electronic image stabilization here in 1080p, yet the Realme 6 Pro has it. It's probably because the Qualcomm Snapdragon 720 handles and can actually do the electronic image stabilization probably a lot better than the MediaTek chip, and this is why Realme perhaps has it disabled and not working on the Realme 6. So this is ultra wide here, and no, again, image stabilization on the Realme 6. So it's just going to lose here with video quality. So when I walk ahead, that it shakes all over the place with the Realme 6, but the 6 Pro doing a much better job. Not to say that this quality is actually very good. No, it's not. Both of the ultra wide cameras for video look quite washed out to me. They're lacking in sharpness and details. The tiny 8 megapixel sensor and that lens does struggle with video. And now 4K video, 30 frames per second is the max that both of these support, and both of them do not have any electronic image stabilization at 4K. right, so let me just round this up. Very easy pick for me that if you want the best video quality, camera quality, battery life, and slightly better build quality, ultra-wide selfie camera, then you go, of course, for the Realme 6 Pro, especially the battery life. Huge difference there if you run 90 Hertz, that it will be a lot longer in the long run running on the Realme 6 Pro. You gain about an extra 2 hours, 3 hours of on-screen time versus 90 Hertz on that MediaTek chip, which is also a hot running warm chip. We know this, okay, from experience that it does get a little bit warmer, probably because we're talking about a 12 nanometer process versus an 8 nanometer process. However, it's not all so clear cut because look at the UI performance. It runs at 90 Hertz, 90 frames per second on the Realme 6. The cheaper device with the MediaTek chip is actually smoother. Very smooth UI performance, really nice, and it's only running 4 gigabytes of RAM, my particular model, and then the 8 gigabytes and the Snapdragon 720 seems to run the UI quite choppy. It's not running at 90 frames per second, definitely not as I demonstrated. It just seems a little bit laggy and shows stutters and frame dips everywhere, especially with the animations. So UI needs to be optimized. Hopefully Realme will be onto this very soon with a firmware update to improve the performance of the UI. Otherwise, I'd say get yourself the Realme 6 Pro if you're thinking about these two. Okay, and there's also, the cutout for the front-facing cameras. It is uglier on the Realme 6 Pro. So hopefully this video was handy, helpful. If it was, it answered all your questions between these two models. And please do give a thumbs up. I put a lot of work into this. And also subscribe to the channel for more up-and-coming videos. And do check my channel for the full reviews of both of these models that go to even more depth and details. Thanks for watching.